vibrato, or just holding a straight note. All of his movements are obviously rehearsed. They are so smooth, and it's something that I'm sure Elvis, having mentioned him earlier, would look at Jackie, and Jackie would look at Elvis. In fact, when they were asked about each other, somebody said that Jackie Wilson was the Black Elvis, and this was put to Elvis, and Elvis said, in that case, I'm the white Jackie Wilson. It's no surprise that Jackie was known as Mr. Excitement because of his live performances, and he was so exciting to watch. I do want to get into a little bit of Jackie's history and his music career, so we're going to launch into that because it's an interesting story. His mother was a talented singer, and he initially joined the choir, and that was at the local church, but he wasn't religious. It was just the place that he went to in order to be able to sing. He did get into trouble from a young age, hanging around in gangs, and he started boxing at age 16 until he was forced to quit by his mum, who didn't want him boxing. And another thing that he was forced to do, unfortunately, his dad wasn't the most savoury character by all accounts. He was forced to marry, and by the age of 17, he was already a dad. So unfortunately, Jackie didn't have a great start to life and was very much under pressure from his dad on that side. So Jackie continued to sing, and he started working as a solo singer. He formed the Falcons, and that was with his cousin Levi Stubbs. And Levi went on to lead the Four Tops. During this time, he was discovered by talent agent Johnny Otis, and Johnny put him into the band The Thrillers, and they became the Royals, and after that they became the Midnighters. But Jackie wasn't in the band when the Midnighters signed their record deal and became more popular. Jackie then signed with a manager called Al Green, and it's not the Al Green that you're thinking of, and Al at the time also managed other successful acts and also owned 2 publishing companies. So Jackie recorded a couple of tracks. One of those was his version of Danny Boy, and he also released these under the name Sonny Wilson. In 1953, he was hired by Billy Ward from Billy Ward and his Dominoes in order to replace Clyde McPhatter. And at this point also, Billy thought that Jackie Wilson would be a better stage name, so that's when that was decided upon. Clyde also showed Jackie vocal techniques and how to get the sound for Billy Ward and his Dominoes. So it was an important learning curve for Jackie to go through, because he said that it did affect him greatly vocally in order to be able to listen to Clyde as a teacher. So Jackie was then the lead singer for 3 years. In 1957, he decided to go solo, and he collaborated with Levi again, and his manager Al got him a deal at Decca Records. Unfortunately, Al died suddenly, so the management duties were taken over by Nat Tarnopol, and he would go on to become the president of Brunswick Records, which was part of Decca at that time. So he released several songs, including Lonely Teardrops, which was a massive hit. It got to number 7 in 1958, but also number 1 in the R&B charts. And to put it in perspective, he still would have been only 24 years of age at this time, and it's the first real time that Mr. Excitement got widespread exposure, and everyone could hear this vocal range and such a different sound to anything else that was around at the time. James Brown was also in the charts, and one of his contemporaries that was influenced by him. I'm sure that these guys were probably taking notes on each other at the time, but that song, the song that we've just looked at in this video, went on to sell over 1 million copies. This was around the time that he became good friends with Elvis, and the late 50s, early 60s, he was appearing on TV a lot, as we can see. 1962, and he had more hits. His song called Night sold over 1 million copies, and also Baby Work Out got to number 5 in the charts, so another massive hit. This was around the time as well that he started to have financial trouble, but we will address that later. Getting into 1964, In 1965, there was a little bit of a lull in sales, but then in 1966, he released Whispers Getting Louder, and that was another massive hit. He also released Your Love Keeps Lifting Me Higher and Higher, and that was a massive hit. It got to number 6 in the charts. Another song that he released at this time was called I Get the Sweetest Feeling, but it wasn't a massive hit at the time. It got to number 34 in the charts, so it didn't do badly, but since it went on to become one of Jackie Wilson's biggest and most well-known songs. So Jackie did experience a lot of success towards the end of that decade in the 60s, but rewinding back to 1961, because that is when Jackie realised for the first time that he was broke and he didn't have any money, so he got in touch with his management to find out where his money was, and it turns out that Nat Tarnopol, who I mentioned earlier, not only was taking all of the royalties that Jackie should have been picking up, but he had power of attorney over all of Jackie's accounts. So Jackie, throughout this whole process, hadn't looked into where the money was going, where his money was, how to get access to it. He was just trusting it all to Nat, who was obviously taking all the money for himself, to the point where in 1975 he was taken to court, Nat Tarnopol, and actually 18 others from Brunswick Records, and they were found guilty of not paying people their royalties and just basically hanging on to all the money, keeping it for themselves. But 18 months later, that decision was overturned. This is the music industry, ladies and gentlemen. But the courts did say that Jackie can sue Nat because of the overwhelming evidence to the fact that Nat owed at least $1 million worth of royalties to Jackie throughout the period that he managed him for. Unfortunately, Jackie was in no position to be able to sue Nat because he was semi-comatose at the time because of a heart attack that he had experienced in 1975. Just to briefly cover Jackie's heart attack in 1975, because it has been reported that he told Elvis he would ingest salt and water in order to induce sweating because he said the chicks love it. He was performing at Dick Clark's Good Old Rock and Roll Review, and he had a massive heart attack whilst performing this song. And Dick Clark realised what was going on. The audience didn't to begin with. They applauded, thinking it was part of the... Dick Clark told the band to stop, and Cornell Gunter from the Coasters ran on stage and noticed that Jackie wasn't breathing. He managed to resuscitate him, and Jackie was taken to hospital, but unfortunately, because of the lack of oxygen to the brain, he was in a coma. He very briefly recovered, but only enough to take a few steps before slipping back into a semi-comatose state. It was declared by medical staff that he was aware of his surroundings, but he couldn't speak. So he was then moved to a retirement centre in New Jersey, and after that, a memorial hospital, and unfortunately passed away 9 years after the initial heart attack that he had whilst performing. In 1984 is when he did pass away, aged 49. There is, unfortunately, an even sadder end to this story, because when Jackie was buried, it was in an unmarked grave, and it wasn't until 1987 that a Detroit radio station had a fundraising event to try and raise enough money to buy Jackie Wilson a headstone, which fortunately they did, so now Jackie does have a headstone. We do have the ability now to look back at 1962 and see Jackie Wilson in full flow, not only with his vocal ability, but pushing the boundaries of entertainment and excitement during performances. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back. I finally getting a chance to react to an artist who I did not know much about until I got into music and I started to kind of research songs back in the 60s and the 70s. And I've heard of Jackie Wilson a lot. And then one day I heard a song called Higher and Higher. And I was like, who is this guy singing like this? He sings like a modern vocalist because his voice is so phenomenal. And it doesn't sound like it will be a singer from the 60s because it's the texture voice that's current. And then I realized who he was and how incredible his voice was. And so I right then knew that we're working with a legend. But I have not seen many of his performances, to be quite honest. I don't know if there's many out there, but I do feel that now that I'm doing my channel, I do want to kind of react to some artists who are very important to music and definitely in culture is very important. So I want to definitely react to this song. I don't think I've ever heard it. It's a song called Baby Workout from Shindig, live in 1965. Wow, that was a while ago, but I do know another thing about Jack is that he's an amazing keyboard artist. Definitely know that. I've seen some footage of him and some things, so we're not too sure what this is. If this is a ballad or a dance song, I'm not too sure, but I'm excited because I need to do more videos by this man because I feel he's one of the greatest just off his name and just off that vocal performance I heard him doing higher and higher. But let's get into it and talk more about this Jackie Wilson and this is the single Baby Workout Shindig. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let's see you later. That was magic. I needed to see that. That is Jackie Wilson is what? So now I see where a lot of the male singers and dancers get there. I see it now. Because I did not know he got down like that. He got some smooth moves. He's like light on his feet though. Wow, Jackie. Good Lord, I did not expect that. He is an incredible showman. Oh wow. I mean, I'm like it's like seeing a new singer for the first time. Kind of like shook it. But more than that, I like that song. I like the groove of that song. But his singing, his voice. I was saying before that the way he has those wings and how high he goes, did you hear how high he went? He did that a few times, but at the end, how he did it up and up and up. And how he's able to sing like that and then drop down and dance like he's doing and move and then slide across the floor. That was incredible. I honestly did not expect that. Wow. I can imagine what that would have been like being in the 60s. Definitely ahead of his time. Wow, man. Okay, so now I got another artist to go down another journey. So I'm excited about this because damn, I just gave my life to him. Well, I'm gonna get that on my playlist many more. He's still one of the greatest singers in my opinion. I love his voice. But more to come. Like, comment, subscribe, and y'all can see.